Sometimes you just have to laugh when you hear attorneys make ridiculous statements in court. Just listen to Craig Morgan, the attorney who is representing the City of Scottsdale, in court on July 18th. He claims the new tax that will be on the ballot in November is, in fact, not a tax.
The original proposition at the time, shall the City Council be authorized to increase the rate of transaction privilege and use taxes in the city by 0.2% for a period of 30 years or less to provide funds to supplement private efforts to acquire land for the McDowell-Sonoran Preserve for the purpose of maintaining scenic views. That was then. What we're trying to do right now is keep that going. Improvements and maintenance for citywide parks and recreational facilities. That includes the Sonoran Preserve. It does. Maintenance and protection for the McDowell-Sonoran Preserve. It says it right there. Maintenance and protection.
Notice the bait and switch. The original proposition was to tax the residents to fund the acquisition of the land in the preserve. Notice it does not say to maintain the land. It says to acquire the land.
Let's just assume we're going to call it a tax, a separate tax rather than the fractional tax rate. Just assume that for a moment. I know it's a little painful for you to do that given the briefing, but it's your point that even if we did that, I assume it's your point, that it's the same tax, right?
First, Your Honor, yes, you are correct. We disagree that it's a tax, but the answer to your question is yes. It's the same thing. It's accomplishing the same result.
Do you think just because we're using the fractional tax rate, because that's what the city's doing, right?
Correct.
Just because it's part of the overall 1.75% fractional tax rate, that's good enough. We can hitch our wagon to any of the fractional tax rates that are expiring. Do you understand my difference?
I think so. Whether it's a tax and it's problematic if there's a sunset provision. This isn't I can't be more adamant. From the city's position, this point of view, it's not a tax. That is a distinction with a difference. Here's my analogy. Think of a bag of marbles. The bag is the transaction privilege tax. In it is composed of all these marbles. One marble is this current tax.
But they're not fungible is what the city's position is, right?
They're not necessarily fungible because those marbles have a value and those marbles are used for something.
Well, that's why I asked the question about whether the funds are compartmentalized or go into different accounts.
And as my understanding is that yes.
So if that's the case, that lends more support to the plaintiff's argument that they're not fungible and that they're different. We're not just lowering the overall fractional tax rate. We are watching it expire.
No, that's not an application. That's not how it works. What we've got here is it's a do or die. At the point in time in 2025, when the current fractional tax rate is set to expire, one of two things happens depending on how things go down in November. One, it's going to have its rate reduced and it's going to continue for another 30 years for these enumerated purposes, or they're not going to pass the proposition and then it goes away. You take the marble out of the bag. It is a technical distinction that does matter here. The issue is the proposition. The city has already determined we're not doing a bond, we're doing a tax, and here's why, or tax rate reduction.
Did he just say the city is not doing a bond? We're doing a tax?
The issue is the proposition. The city has already determined we're not doing a bond, we're doing a tax, and here's why, or tax rate reduction.
Then he goes on to attack the residents who filed the complaint because they felt the ballot language was misleading.
What we have are a vocal, politically active minority who are saying, Judge, here's what I want you to do. I want you to become the City of Scottsdale. I want you to decide what the voters can and can't do. This court should be very reluctant to interfere in these sorts of matters in this way.
When discussing another court case from the past, the city's lawyer pulled out all the stops.
And Your Honor, as amazing as you are, as amazing as this court is, and as much as I love all of our courts in Arizona, and I'm a former law clerk,
it's no wonder that the judge ruled in favor of the city and dismissed the case. The ballot language Proposition 490 was devised to confuse the voters into voting yes. The city is spending your tax dollars to mislead voters about a tax that's designed to pad the general fund. This Tax and Spend Council just wants your money. Are you going to give it to them with no accountability? So, when you see Proposition 490 on your ballot in November, just remember, a no vote will reduce the sales tax.